educators. My name is Donda Slayton. I am an administrator at Caney ISD, and I'm joined today with my good friend and producer, Chris Hurst. Hey, Chris,
Hey.
how's it going?
Oh, it's going great. I'm so glad to be here for another episode today.
Yes. So I can't wait to tell you about our guest. She is very interesting, and it just has a lot of insight, Chris. And she has a wide range of skills. She's worked with EB students. She has been a counselor. She's been an
Okay.
instructional coach. She's been at my school, Kiefer Crossing. She has been at Porter High School, and she is the Dean of Instruction at Porter High School. You know who I'm talking about?
I do.
Dr. Susan Messmer. So I
She's
can't wait
great.
for her to join us. And she's going to be talking to us about self-efficacy and really what that means for teachers and students and the impact it can bring to a campus. And I just can't wait to speak with her. She's always so interesting, good to talk to.
Yeah, she's super passionate about everything that she does, and I'm really excited for this one.
Absolutely. She's a great friend. I can't wait to hear from her.
When we get back from the break, we're going to be talking to Dr. Susan Messmer of Porter High School.
Chris, it is with great excitement that I tell you I am so happy to see Dr. Susan Messmer. She is the Dean of Instruction at Porter High School, and we have her as our guest to talk about self-efficacy. And so that is a topic, I feel like sometimes, Susan, that's one of those words that's kind of like rigor. You know, people just
Right.
throw it out. So let's just start off with defining, like, self-efficacy. What really is a good definition of that?
So self-efficacy is this idea, this concept that was developed by Alfred Bandura, a psychologist in the early 90s. And it's different than self-esteem. It's this idea that self-efficacy is what we believe about our capabilities, our abilities to achieve a specific task. So, and it can be specific to the task. So in terms of education, self-efficacy is the idea that teachers are capable of growing student achievement. It is what we as educators and as professionals, as humans, believe about ourselves and our abilities. It's not our self-worth, it's not these big concepts, it's very centrally, am I able in this classroom to grow students?
Oh, I love that. So that's so when they come to us and we hire them, I mean, people would be on a range, a continuum, right, of self-efficacy.
Right, and it's also not really related to how well a teacher is actually teaching. It's a self-concept. So a new teacher is automatically probably going to have lower self-efficacy, and mid-range teachers, 5, 6, 7 to 10 years, have different. If they've never been reinforced, they may believe that they're doing worse than they're doing, so their self-efficacy is a little bit lower. And the most experienced veteran teachers generally tend to have higher self-efficacy because they've done it long enough, they know who they are.
Sure, and they have a bigger lens, right, because they've been doing it longer.
Right.
So then how important is that to ensure, as leaders, that our staff, or even groups of teachers for that matter, but that we have a high level of that self-efficacy?
Well, so my background, I came into leadership through instructional coaching and through counseling. So it's sort of an SEL concept. However, when you look at Visible Learning by Hattie, who evaluated 195 practices that teachers we have in education that we take part in.
Yes.
And he said the most impactful, with the greatest level of influence on student achievement, was collective self-efficacy. And so what collective self-efficacy is what the group of, Porter High School, for example, what do we believe about ourselves as Porter High School? And it's made up of a lot of little pieces, like what do teachers believe their personal self-efficacy and their individual self-efficacy, and then combined into collective as self-efficacy. It has the most impact on student achievement as compared to 195 other factors. It is Hattie's number one.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Salud.
Stardust.
Stardust. Oh my goodness. Sorry about that, Dr. Messmer.
That's
My
okay.
goodness.
That's okay.
You're good.
So, and I'll talk a little
I
bit.
guess it's that pretzel.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So let's talk about, I hear you saying that I mean, the teacher's self-efficacy is important, but how powerful is it as a collective unit?
So it was like it impacts a lot of things. So you look at even school districts like Katy. It's Katy, Katy, Katy. Like they have this whole story about themselves. So at Porter, we've begun this story about ourselves, that we thrive for excellence and we advertise it. And so the reality is about self-efficacy is this. When teachers develop self-efficacy, it has real life impacts. It's not just a generalized impact. The research has shown that teachers who believe they're able to grow students won't stop until they grow students. So they have greater persistence. So they will persist with a lesson until all kids get it.
Grit.
They have grit. They have greater creativity. They will adapt and adjust the lesson because they know I can grow these kids.
Right.
And they also have greater job satisfaction because there is emotional reward, like, hey, I'm good at this. And then they are happier as teachers.
Yes. So how do we grow that in all teachers?
So there are very specific ways. Research has shown, Bandura has shown that there are 4 primary ways to grow it, which is very cool because it's systematic and you can grow it. So the first is experience of mastery. That's why experienced teachers, veteran teachers tend to have more self-efficacy. They've experienced mastery. They know what it feels like. They're virtuoso. They know. But what's really great for me is that it can be developed through vicarious mastery. And it means just by seeing somebody do something great, let's say you work with emergent bilingual students, and you know you can grow EB students like nobody's business.
Sure.
But let's say you don't have confidence in that and you don't believe you can. So you're running through lessons, kids aren't growing. You can take that teacher and let them witness another teacher growing that group of kids and being very successful, and that bolsters that teacher's sense of self-efficacy.
Absolutely.
Because they see and they're like, oh, it can be done. This is doable.
You know what I love most about what you said, Susan? This sounds so complicated, and yet you've broken it down to, it really is so simple, Chris.
Right.
I mean, when you talk about we do that, taking teachers to other teachers to watch and to mentor, and something so simple that cost absolutely nothing.
Right.
It costs nothing. And what's cool about that too is sometimes those mid-level, the mid-career teachers who are like 5-7 years in, who you know are really good but lack self-efficacy, if you put a brand new teacher in there to watch them and then they consult, that teacher's like, man, you did that so well. So then you get double impact where a teacher who is good but doesn't know it is getting positive feedback from a peer saying, you did great. That's bolstered for them. The newbie is getting like vicarious self-efficacy. And another really important, super simple process is it's called persuasion, a social persuasion. And what that is just positive, specific feedback. Like, hey, you're doing great with this. And, you know, you reward people and you put your lens on the positive and you find ways to give specific positive feedback. And we all need that. But it actually, by giving positive feedback to teachers, you improve student achievement.
Absolutely.
And then the emotion of teaching,
I love that. And you know, that's one of the big 3, our feedback and follow through. And so this skill fits perfectly into that, Chris. So we have a big 3 now that we're talking about in secondary, and one of them is feedback and follow through. And that would involve students, of course, but it's for teachers and as we walk through. So then what I hear you saying, Susan, we go in and it's more important really than ever that if we're going to grow self-efficacy in our teachers, that when we go in classrooms and we see them doing things, even if it's small, we need to point out and be very specific, strategic in what we're doing and tell them what they're doing well.
Absolutely.
Tell them what they're doing well as teachers. Tell them what they're doing well as teams. When we go back to school and I speak to the staff as dean, I'm going to celebrate everything we did last year. We just got our AP scores back and they're improved. And I'm going to take time before I'm not going to beat anyone down. I'm going to just build and talk about our greatness, because that messaging, it's super pervasive in our culture. Like, it can be negative messaging or it can be positive. And what's cool about it, it's not just for me. I love building people. It's part of who I am. It's the counseling side of me. But it has legitimate effects on student achievement and retention. And teacher retention is impacted. Teachers who have higher self-efficacy stay in the profession.
Well, and what I would imagine at Porter High School, by taking this approach, I mean, why wouldn't you stay, Chris? Why wouldn't you stay at a school where they believe you can do it.
Yeah.
Because 99.9% of teachers don't get into teaching, right, Susan,
Right.
to just say, I think I'll be a teacher. They
Right.
want to make a
Right.
difference, and they want to help improve people's
Right.
lives, right?
They
And
want to be
so-
the teacher that they had.
Absolutely, Chris. And so when they hear people like Dean Messmer, when they hear you believe in them, and then they start believing in themselves, I mean, who wouldn't want to be a part of that culture?
Who doesn't? I mean, and I need that. Like, I need to
Yes.
be a parent that say, oh, yeah, that was great. It's something
Right.
I need, and it makes me feel better and more confident in what I'm doing. Like, oh, I did great on that. I can keep going. And then even down to student achievement, we do a lot of social media posts. Our hashtag is Spartan Excellence.
Right.
And so every time anybody wins anything, we highlight all the things our kids are doing because teachers are like, oh, we do have great kids. We
Well,
talk
and that's
about
a
how
reflection of them, right? It's
Right.
almost like the parent,
Right.
when the child does something well, the parent's so proud, that's the same thing with a teacher. I know that's exactly how I feel. When a student does something great, you feel like you're a small part of that.
Well,
and who doesn't want to be that, right?
And we are a big part of that. When
Yes.
some of our kids who are first generation and have food insecurity because of their teachers are getting to Cornell University, that's
Right.
a celebration of all of us. That is a celebration of
Absolutely.
Porter High School and our work.
Because it does take a team.
It does take a
Yes.
team, and teachers just have to own that. And if you give that to them, then they want to get in. It feels good.
Right.
It's a self-rewarding cycle, and
Sure.
it spreads to teams, and it spreads to the school, and it builds upon itself.
Yes, I love that, Susan. So then we have a good idea of kind of what that looks like, but what are some specific ways that we can help our teachers, set them up, help them grow their self-efficacy? What are some strategies or ways you develop your teachers?
So part of coaching when teachers are struggling is always to go see someone who does it well, but not, and in the veteran teacher, but also younger teachers who they can see reflected in themselves. I've done peer coaching where I put teachers together where it's not the 20-year veteran, it's a teacher that's 5 or 6 years in, and I have them support each other. We do learning walks where we go through and we watch teachers who are good, and we have learning walks. I celebrate like teams that, especially like say our biology team, they're really hard on themselves. They're scoring at like 90%, kids passing on their tests and stuff, but it's never enough for them. And my job with that team is just to go in and celebrate them because we're harder on ourselves than anyone
Absolutely.
else. And if we can just go in and say, I know, but look how great this is. Look what you've done, and I'm so proud of you. I mean, our words can speak life into teachers, or it can make them feel bad about themselves.
Absolutely, Susan. And I was a student athlete, and so that's really where my drive to become a teacher came from, was from coaching. And
Same.
so it's really, though, what you're talking about, being a good coach, right? Because they don't get you on the court and drive you in the ground. It's, come on, you can do it. I know you can do it, and lead the team. And so that's really what you're doing for the biology team, is being a good coach to them.
And it doesn't mean not being honest. I will say this. It doesn't mean when teachers are struggling, you have to have that honest conversation. Like, I know you're struggling. You are struggling if you don't know you're struggling. But I'm going to set up these opportunities to get you coached. And when they respond to that, the teachers need praise. They need to be,
Absolutely.
seen to be doing it. And the beauty of all of this is it's great for humans, but it's great for student achievement. It
Sure, because
is
that just spills over,
impactful.
doesn't it?
Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
like scientifically proven that all of this improves student achievement.
Yes.
Right.
No, I do love what you said, though, about, being truthful, about their impact, because people know when we're not authentic.
Right.
And so a person knows when they're struggling
Right.
or need to do more.
Right.
And so it doesn't help anyone. As a matter of fact, I think it takes away your credibility
It
when you're
does.
not honest with them.
Right.
However, I also love the fact that you're still setting them up within a system to help support them and grow them,
Right.
so that they do know, oh, there is an opportunity, I can improve. And that surely builds their self-efficacy.
Yes,
When they see
yes.
them reach their self reach those goals.
Well, and if you've been honest with teachers, and people know you're honest with teachers and teams, when you do praise them, that praise has validity.
Right.
because you've been honest about when it hasn't been great. I mean,
that's a great point.
I'm not trying to pretend like things are great, but our teachers do great things every day.
No, absolutely. It's one of those things, really, Susan, what I hear you saying is, I mean, we are speaking truth, but leaving them with their dignity.
Absolutely.
We are not
absolutely.
going in and tearing down the team. We're just being honest with them. And so you have to kind of put it in the forefront so that you can be solution focused, right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I love that. So let's go back to the learning walks, because when you mentioned that, it did spark something. We do learning walks. And, but really, for me, Chris, Susan, I really thought of it as a way of like professional development. I love this concept of it's even more than I ever thought. So talk to us about learning walks and how you think that, or how does that build self-efficacy in teachers?
Well, I think that when teachers go into, so let's say you have a teacher who, anywhere on the spectrum, but let's say it's a mid-career teacher who hasn't been out of the classroom much because we get isolated in our classrooms, goes in, sees this teacher that they respect doing the same type of things that they're doing. They're like, I would have reacted the same way. Maybe I'm not a terrible teacher.
Right.
Or they go into a classroom, because sometimes you walk into classrooms that are a disaster, and you're like, oh, this is a train wreck. What's happening here? And they walk out and say, my classroom's better than that. Or a teacher who doesn't know what to do or has a train wreck classroom goes in and sees a teacher who's, I mean, none of our classrooms are train wrecks, let's be real, but they have, there's some things going on.
Well, a student will always present themselves a certain way sometimes.
Right.
And so it might be, usually what I find, Dr. Messmer, it's a train wreck to the teacher, but not to me.
Not to me.
Yes.
Like, I say that our teachers
because
are
we
great.
don't expect perfection.
And every time, like, there have been plenty of days when I was a teacher, I had to, like, ditch the lesson and start over mid-lesson because it wasn't working.
Yes.
But let's say they go in and there's an issue. Sorry I said train wreck, but there's an issue. And they go, oh, I wouldn't know how to handle that, or I haven't seen that handled, and they watch someone else handle it well. They go, oh, that's doable. Or even sometimes with kids who have bad behaviors, they see those same kids being handled differently in the classroom, and it gives them the idea, I can do this, this is doable, this isn't a lost cause. So all of that contributes to positive self-efficacy.
I believe it.
Right.
Because what we know is in the teacher's mind, they've run out of strategies. I've done everything I can. I've tried everything I can. Maybe I'm not good enough because what else is there? And so by having learning walks, letting the teachers experience that, I mean, that shows them just a different lens. Widens their perspective.
Right. It does. It does. And, it also ties into SEL. Like, this is really adult SEL. There's this one part in 7 Mindsets, and it's quote, and it says, whether you believe you can or you can't, you're right.
Right.
And that is the core of self-efficacy. If you believe you can grow kids, you will. But if you believe you can't, then you're going to give up. You're going to feel bad about yourself. You're not going to be persistent. You're going to barrel through a lesson whether kids are getting it or not. And so it's that whether you believe you can or you can't. So it does tie into adult SEL. The beauty of it is it's scientifically proven to impact student achievement.
I love that. I love what I really love, I know this is so complicated, but it is so simplistic as well. And so what are some other ways, learning walks and things, what are specific strategies that you use just one-on-one, maybe when you're coaching someone to build their self-efficacy? What might you say to them?
So for me, coaching is always 2 positives, 1 growth. I think you start off where people are doing well. Like everyone, you can find something people are doing well, and it can be very specific. So if I'm speaking to someone, I talk about how I appreciate and I'm proud of this, and I think this is going great, and I have a lot of respect for them, but an area of growth, I think, would be this area, and I think that some coaching would help, and I would like for you to reach out to so-and-so so that we can get that built up. So it's always about positive feedback and positive input, not being dishonest, but and then rewarding when that happens, setting them up with a partner who both of them will benefit from the peer coaching experience, and we give teachers opportunities to be leaders. Like when you pair a teacher with someone who's struggling and say, listen, you're doing really great with this. Can you please, partner with this teacher who's, and y'all observe each other. I'll give you some coverage for you to go observe each other's classes and then have a conversation after. It bolsters the self-efficacy, the confidence of the teacher who you're asking to support, and the other, sometimes things coming from us, or there's a lot of emotions when someone over you, an evaluator, comes and talks to you. But when a peer is supporting you, it feels different. So you empower both people.
Unfortunately, although we give them lots of support, it's a lot more safe.
It
It's
is.
safer to be with a peer.
Yeah, and so that's something very specific that I do, and it depends. And like specifically, like we talk about, okay, I need a teacher who's really good at classroom management routines and procedures, and then it doesn't even have to be the same content. Like you just send that teacher, like, can you support them with this? Like I've seen your routines and procedures are so on point, and your class flows beautifully. Can you please support this teacher on this? Can you meet, observe, and then support each other? And it doesn't become evaluatory. It's not formal coaching, but it empowers both teachers.
Sure. So in a school, explain how you partner teachers. I'm just thinking, like, if a teacher is good at certain things, I mean, how do you go about identifying what teachers' strengths are so that you can pair them effectively?
So I have a beautiful coaching staff, and I have good relationships with my evaluators, the APs who evaluate. We have lots of conversations very early on about, who's our strongest teachers, who's some struggling teachers, who needs the most support. And then we identify through having conversations, observations, what support, like getting to root cause analysis. Like there's a science behind root cause analysis. And so I do a lot of professional development with my coaching team, and we meet and we have conversations. And then who's strong in certain, like if you're in classrooms,
Yes.
as leaders, we need to be in classrooms. As leaders, we need to be, the primary focus of everything we do in education is the classroom. It is a central
100%.
thing that happens, is the teacher's relationship with the students, and we have to know how that's going. And we only know that by having a group of leaders who are all dedicated to making sure that goes well. So identifying conversations, like understanding and being able to observe and understand which part of the pedagogy and lesson, what part is the struggle, and then identifying who has that strength on campus and saying, okay, and then we have conversations. We do group think with my coaches. I meet with my coaches, and they're an amazing group of leaders, and we just identify it, then they facilitate that pairing. And I believe in this so much that I do provide coverage.
Yes.
Like if a teacher needs to get out and observe and they need to spend time together, I will provide coverage for them during that period for them to work together on that, because I believe the benefits are.
Well, because what you
preserved.
said before, you're really not just growing one person. So you're having an impact
On
on a
both
group,
sides.
on two people, the partners, then off to their team, then
And all the kids that they touch.
and the kids that they touch. Absolutely.
And then we have the added benefit of job satisfaction. We all know the state of things
Yes.
with teachers
Right.
and leaving
We have
us.
to keep them, Susan.
And we had very little turnover this year. So it's reaping benefits, because it's important that teachers know that, it's a hard place to be right now. We get a lot of criticism. We have a lot of hard conversations, and they have to know that we are seeing the good in them and supporting
Right.
them.
Absolutely.
I love that. So you've been doing this, all year at Porter High School. Talk to, and I'm sure with your background, you've done this in many other areas, but Porter High School specifically, how do you think you coaching these teachers and pairing them, how has that impacted the campus as a whole?
So again, we had much lower levels of turnover this year. The culture and climate survey has improved, and people feel like when we have the feedback, we have feedback meetings at the end of the year where there's a panel from the departments, and they bring what they like and what they feel is good and what they feel is we need help on. And in general, teachers feel supported. They understand the support, and our scores have gone up. Like our teachers report feeling happier. We had lower turnover this year. Our scores have gone up. Like we just got our AP scores, they're back. And then when I ask, sometimes we have to do hard asks, right? We need CCMR to grow. We need these things to happen. And when you've invested and you've created an environment where teachers are emotionally happy with you, they feel supported, you've been giving them the feedback and the coaching and the support they need, you've built this culture where you identify as we're an excellent group, and then you go to them with an ask. like, I need college bridges to have I need at least 90% of our kids to be college and career ready, whatever that takes, they're more likely to return that investment that you've made because they're part of a group and they understand that they have belonging and they want to stay and they want that excellence and it's doable.
I believe it. However, on the backside, Susan, you've also grown their belief that they can do it.
That they can do it.
So yes, not only job satisfaction, but you've shown them and believed in them,
Right.
And shown them that they can do this and that they're worthy of the investment.
They
right?
are worthy of investment. And it's interesting, though, and I haven't really mentioned this, that a teacher that has really high self-efficacy in AP and with honors kids may specifically have low self-efficacy with special education kids or emergent bilingual kids because they don't have they don't know that they can do it.
Right.
And so some of the support has to be specialized. And some of the support has to be, like, you have to understand, like, where teachers are really good and where they fit in and where they feel, like, I have teachers who are like, I can't work as good with honors kids. I don't grow them as much, but give me some special education kids and I can grow them.
Right.
So I think understanding where teachers are
Sure,
and where
so
they...
that's even it's a multi-layered approach. Certainly we want teachers that will just teach the students, as they come. However, I think that contributes to the job satisfaction too, when you put them with their passion, the students that they believe in themselves about, right? And so that alone must bolster their self-efficacy.
Yeah.
If I really have a passion for EB students or honor students, and that's where you place me to teach, that even adds to that.
And then it's rewarding. Like, I feel
Yes.
rewarded because I'm invested in this community. Like, I'm invested in these kids. Like, I feel like I'm
Right.
making a difference. It's my
Yes.
purpose. It's a very complicated sort of
That's what I was gonna
emotional,
say,
psychological
Susan.
thing.
It's one of those things that it is so simple yet so complicated.
Well, it's like culture. It's like invisible, like gravity. Like,
Right.
it impacts everything.
How do you feel, right?
How do you feel? It impacts everything, but it takes a long time, and then you have to, like, take the temperature on it, and you have to figure out. But I just think that just consistent positive messaging and
Sure. Well, that's what I was actually my next question that popped up. I see this, and it sounds like you're going in a great direction, but what's next for you? What's next for Porter High School with this? Since you didn't have such a turnover, how can you continue this momentum?
So for me, one of the things this year is going to be expanding the peer coaching, because I didn't realize how impactful it was to the sort of 5 to 6 years. So, you try things, you have your doctorate.
Absolutely, yes, yes.
Part of being a doctorate is understanding we have a problem, what's the solution, how do we evaluate the results?
Yes.
And that's part of the learning of that process. And so when I talk to people after, I didn't realize how impactful it would be for those 5 to 6 year teachers who are upcoming leaders. Like, it's a informal leadership place we put as the exemplar in a peer coaching relationship. So I would like to expand that. I'm really focusing on all leaders. We're getting processes in place to leave very specific positive feedback, not just me and not just my coaches, but also the APs. Like, when we enter a classroom, it's the feedback, but it needs to be specific and it needs to be focused on, what are they doing at that moment to where it feels legitimate. And
Well, making it real for them in the moment. I mean, you have to paint a picture, even if for them, so that they believe you.
Yeah,
right? I mean, if I say...
They might not remember what they were talking about when you came in their room.
Yes,
it's not just great job.
That's what I was about to
Right.
say.
Yeah.
You can't just walk in and, we almost need sentence stems, Susan.
Yes.
You
That's a great idea for our, for
Yes.
scaffolding feedback.
Yes, yes.
Absolutely.
Well, because that's a
I do
skill
think
set,
that's a good
really.
idea.
Giving
Yeah.
feedback is a skill set.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we see things, I know I'm like this, I see things and I'll think, wow, that is a really good job. And I do have to stop and say, okay, wait a minute, I said it's a good job, but what makes it so great? But sometimes our teachers do such wonderful things, Susan. And so that is what pops in my mind, Chris. And I'm like, wait a minute, stop. I need to be very specific
Right.
with this. But it is so great to see things in action with the students.
Yeah.
So I had a brand new teacher last year, and I walked in, and there were a lot of things that needed to be fixed, but she was comfortable in her first year with students. And I was like, you know what? You were so comfortable and you felt so at home with those kids. You can do anything because you don't have that And it was simple feedback. She needed to fix a lot of things. She
Sure,
needed a lot of
sure.
help. But
Right.
that specifically, like, I saw your comfort with your students and your students like learning from you. And that type of very specific feedback is helpful. So working with the APs, working with them, building their self-efficacy on feedback and
Sure.
instructional
Right.
pieces. I mean, because we're so often very operational and student
Absolutely.
services centered. So sort of investing in our APs that way.
I love that. This makes me come back around. What advice do you have, or suggestions, I guess, on how we could grow our own skill set in giving feedback? Do you have any suggestions for us?
So our own skill set, I say be honest. We often, it's become almost cliche, but, clarity is kind, clear is kind. So give positive and constructive criticism, but positive, always start with the positive, and focus your lens on it's so easy for us to get bogged down in what's going wrong.
Yeah.
We're problem solvers all the time. We're we're always striving for a perfection that we may not get. And so a lot of our attention as administrators is focused on hard conversations with parents and what's going on
Yes.
with kids and what's going on with accountability. But we have to open our lens up. And also it helps us, right? It helps us as well to be able to focus on the positive and just find kind words and positive feedback for people. And it will make our lives better as well.
I love that, Susan. One of the things that I used to do is, if we had a PD, for example, one time we had a little PLC over sentence stems. And then I told the teachers, I'm going to be coming in and looking for the way that you use sentence stems.
Absolutely.
And that was unbelievable at their response, at my feedback. They knew what I was coming to look for. However, when I went and then gave them that specific feedback, it was like something brand new, Susan. So sometimes even they might know what you're looking for, but still that specific feedback on that, it really was it grew them.
Absolutely, it will.
It does. And sort of side effect and something I saw also, but when we would do new initiatives or we do a new strategy, we have a new strategy coming out and we'd say, okay, we're going to do this new strategy. I would pair them up and I'd have the more experience. I need you to model this for the less experienced teacher. But it made them accountable for implementing the strategy because they had to do it to show the new person, and
That's a great
the new
skill.
teacher was like, oh, I can do this now.
Yes, because most of the time, those teachers maybe are a little resistant to a new strategy or new, just because they feel like they should already know, right? Because
Right.
they have some experience.
They have to, but then you frame it, and
Oh,
it's-
yes.
you're like, hey, I need you to do this for them, and then they're like, wow, that was really great, and they put it in their toolkit too. So
Yes.
it's good. It's all over, and
That's amazing.
yeah.
Well, Dr. Messmer, it has been such a great honor. This has been a great topic, Chris.
Absolutely,
Oh,
yeah.
wow. I knew it would be, but I learned something. I learned so much today from you. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, this is a counselor skills. Why counselors in leadership are good.
Well,
That's right.
I
That's
think
right.
it's invaluable.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I do too, and I think that even if someone is just watching this as a teacher or even a para that's trying to become a teacher, all these skills where we're talking about going from leadership to classroom, they translate from teacher to kids
Absolutely.
exceptionally well.
Exceptionally well. And
Yes.
this does speak to a wide audience.
Absolutely.
I love this, Susan.
Yeah.
So thank you again so
Thank
much.
you for having
All
me.
right. Well, we
This
come
was
back
fun.
we're so glad you came. When we come back from the break, we're going to answer a listener question from one of our aspiring administrators in the district.
Okay, perfect.
All right, we are back from our break, and it's time for one of our favorite parts of this show where we
Yes, it
take
is.
listener questions from our Aspiring Administrators Academy.
And
Today-
this week's question, I think, matches. I'm glad you're still with us, Susan, because I think this matches
yeah,
your insight perfectly.
you're going to have a lot to say about this.
Okay.
Okay, so our listener asks, how does 7 Mindsets help with self-efficacy?
I mean, self-efficacy is a mindset. I
Sure.
mean,
So it could be an 8th mindset.
well, it's part of believing in yourself. I can't remember the exact mindset, but there is one a quote that says, I said it in the interview, whether you believe you can or you can't, you're right. And that
Sure.
is the heart of self-efficacy, is what you believe that you're able to do. So in 7 Mindsets, one of the things we try to do is help students grow their belief in themselves and stop doubting. Like if you're fearful and you doubt yourself and you don't think you're able to do anything, you will never take that first step.
Right.
And I think that, believing that you are basically capable at achieving things, I always say to myself, well, somebody did this. Like
Sure.
if I'm trying to achieve something, I'm like, somebody did this. It means if I find out the way and I work hard, I can do it too.
Oh, I love
100%.
that.
But you have to believe that you're a capable person. Now, with teachers, we're talking about specifically in education, but, Bandura in psychology talked about, feeling capable. And so 7 Mindsets really focuses on building those mindsets in students, but I would say in adult SEL, self-efficacy is a focus of that has, and the 7 Mindsets have real impact on students' lives
Yeah.
because these are attitudes that will stick with them for the rest of their lives.
Right.
You know what? I love what Mr. Calvert says about 7 Mindsets. He says that he likes to describe it to people as 7 Mindsets is a thing that we use to help students make sense of their world. And so that is so true, whether it be you believe in yourself or you're accountable or you have an attitude of gratitude. All of those things grows our self-efficacy, right?
Right. And, our ultimate goal, Dr. Slayton, you were many years leading the high school. Our ultimate goal throughout education, but it's really focused on the high school, is to create people who are ready to go out in the world
Yes.
and pursue their dreams and their
Right.
goals. And I feel with the 7 Mindsets, we're laying some very foundational beliefs and ideas about how to navigate the world.
Right.
And do that in a positive way with a positive lens.
Right.
Oh, I love that.
100%.
Yes. Thank you so much, Susan.
Thank
It
you.
has been great to have you. And thank you for sticking around and helping us with our exit ticket.
Okay.
Before we end, do you have a quote you'd like to end on, Dr. Messmer?
Oh, we love quotes, Messmer. We love quotes.
I do have a quote, and it kind of matches my personality. It's a quote by Carl Sagan, and it helps me in dark moments. And Carl Sagan said, during your darkest days, remember, we're all made of stardust.
Chris, I'm going
Pretty
home
cool.
to the makerspace and making a T-shirt of that. That's amazing.
I am made of stardust.
That's
I'm
right.
going to remember that, Messmer. I am going to remember that.
That's gonna be what
And
you think of,
that's
Messmer
exactly
Stardust.
Right. That's right. And anytime I need to pick me up, I'm going to stop and think, what are you doing,
Yeah.
Donda? You are made of stardust.
You are
That's
made of
right.
stardust, Dr. Slayton.
That's right. Well, thank you so much again for joining us, and we can't wait to the wonderful year you're going to have at Porter.
Absolutely. We wish you a great year. We're about ready to get started, and I know that there's going to be amazing things going on for our Porter Spartans, Chris.
Yes, amazing. Yes. And for New Caney as a whole.
Absolutely.
Well, Dr. Messmer, we're so glad you were able to join us today. You really highlighted a big and important part of the education space that I think is unique to you because you have so much counseling experience, and we're so thankful you're able to join us.
Absolutely. And Susan, what I loved most about what you had to say to us and our aspiring leaders, these are things that were going in my mind that anyone could do to help build self-efficacy in our campus, just our groups, our departments, or even starting with our new teachers to help that retention rate and
100%.
keep our teachers. So I really appreciate this topic. It really spoke to me today. Thank you so much for coming.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity and the space to talk about the things I'm passionate about.
I love
Oh,
it.
yeah, of course. All right. Well, that's our episode for today.
Whoop, whoop.
Yes.